Alright, welcome to Lesson 3, Multiplying and Dividing Real Numbers. So, this just going to multiply some real numbers together. I know we've done some of this stuff before. So what I want you to do now is to pause the video, and in your group, go ahead and perform the operations that are indicated here. Go ahead and pause the video now. Okay, 7 times 4, 28, 8 times 10, 80, 2 times 1/2 is 1, 4 times 1 over 5 is 4 over 5, x times x times x is x to the third, a times a is a squared, times 1b. We don't have 4 times any number, we have 2 x's, so it's x squared. And we have 2 y's, so it's y squared. So, in this multiplication that you just did, you used a lot of properties that you may not realize. And here we're going to formally talk about those properties that make all this possible. So first, let's talk about some negative rules. First one says that a product is negative if it has an odd number of negative factors. So if we have an odd number of negatives that we're multiplying, it's going to be a negative number at the end. And a product is positive if it has an even number of negative factors. So if we look down here at the examples, we have positive 4 times negative 3. So we have one negative factor, so we're going to have a negative answer. Here we have negative 5 times negative 8. Two negatives make a positive, so negative 5 times negative 8 is positive, and it's a positive 40. Positive 2 times negative 4, odd number of negatives, so it's negative, and it's a negative 8. A negative 1 and a negative 7. Two negatives make a positive. Negative 1 times negative 7 is positive 7. So there is our negative rules. Now let's talk about these multiplication properties. Now some of these properties are very similar to the addition properties. So what I want you to do now is to pause the video and see if you can figure out what's going on in these 6 properties. So go ahead and pause the video now. Alright, so let's talk about number 1. Number 1, it says 2 times 3 equals question mark. Well, if you solve that, you see that 2 times 3 equals 6. And this property is the closure property, and it's the same idea that we had before with addition. It says that if we do 2 times 3 or 3 times 2, it does not matter. We will get one number. We cannot get two numbers. So 2 times 3 gives you just one number. Property 2 says that 3 times 4 equals 4 times 3. Well, this looks very similar to the commutative property, of addition, and it's the same one for multiplication. So this is the commutative property. It says that we can switch the order up of multiplying and it doesn't change anything. 3 looks like the associative property that we dealt with before, and it is. The associative property says that if we're multiplying, it doesn't matter how we group our numbers. We'll get the same answer no matter what. Now for 4, you had to solve for the question mark. And if you solve for the first one, you see that 2 times 1 is 2. 1 times 2 is 2. And you know that's true by the associative property that we just talked about. But this also looks kind of weird, because what does 1 do in multiplication? Well, 1 makes a number be itself if you use it. That's the same idea as 0 with addition. And 0 was the identity for addition, so 1 is the identity for multiplying. So this is the identity property, and the identity is 1. 5, it says 3 times 0. And if you perform 3 times 0, you know you should get 0. Now this is a new property, and it's called the 0 property. It says that if anything times 0 is 0. And the last property is also new. 4 times negative 1. Well, you know 4 times 1 is 4, but if you use the negative rule, you know that it switches signs. And this is called the negative 1 property. And the negative 1 property just says that if you multiply by negative 1, it changes signs. Whatever you multiply by changes signs. So here are 6 properties for multiplication. Now let's talk about the properties of division. The first property of division is called the multiplicative inverse. And it's a very long name for something that's very simple. It says that the inverse of a number in multiplication, I use the x for multiplication, is the reciprocal. And all that basically means is that if we have 2, the opposite of 2 is 1 over 2. We just flip it. Or if we have 1 over 3, the opposite of 1 over 3 is 3. We just flip it. The second property is the inverse property. It says that for every non-zero number, a, there is a unique number, 1 over a, such that if we do a times 1 over a, we get 1. Or if we do 2 times 1 over 2, we also get 1. What this says is that if we take a and the reciprocal and we put them together, by multiplying, we're going to get the number 1. So a number times its reciprocal equals 1. And our last property is the division rule. It says that dividing a number b by a number c, like this example down here, this b divided by c, is the same as saying b times 1 over c. The key here, though, is c cannot equal 0. You cannot divide by 0. I'm going to put this in big red letters. Do not divide by 0. It will not work. You cannot divide by 0. The day that you are actually able to divide by 0, the world will explode. Okay, on to the last slide. We're going to talk about negative division properties. So the first one says that the quotient of two numbers with the same sign is positive. So if we're dividing a positive number by a positive number, like here, we get a positive number. If we divide a negative number by a negative number, like this, we will get a positive number. So two positives equal a positive, two negatives equal a positive. Just like our negative multiplication property. The second one says that the quotient of two numbers with opposite signs is negative. So if we take a negative a divided by a positive b, we get a negative a over b. if we take a positive a divided by a negative b, we still get a negative a over b. And the last, dividing by a fraction. When we divide by a fraction, you basically can't. You have to manipulate it. What you do is you take whatever fraction you're dividing and you change it to the reciprocal. You flip it and multiply. So we're going to flip 2 over 3 into 3 over 2, and then we're going to do 5 times 3 over 2. 5 times 3 is going to be 15. 1 times 2 is 2. So you can't divide by a fraction, you have to flip it and multiply. And that is the end of this lesson.